Westeros is a land built on steel, fire and blood. But who were the greatest fighters to ever walk these lands? Not kings and lords in name only, but men who carved their legends with every swing of the blade, every clash of shield and every drop of blood spilled. Today we look at the deadliest champions of ice and fire, the knights, killers, kings and monsters who defined battle in Westeros and left their mark on history forever. Andrik the Unsmiling, a fearsome Ironborn warrior associated with House Drum and later service to Aeron Greyjoy politics, portrayed as a huge, grim Ironborn champion, mentioned in Ironborn sagas as a top raider fighter of his generation, present in the violent politics of Iron Islands. Specific single combats are sung, but the books present him mostly as a living legend referenced by others. His weapons and style is brutal, axe and shield raider techniques, raw power, dread presence, boarding and close quarters killing. A contemporary best of the Iron Islands, feared, efficient and emblematic of raider culture. At the King's Moot, his name was shouted as a true contender for the Sea Stone chair. Singers whispered, the singers call Andrik best now, for his ferocity was legendary. He fought with no mirth, no joy, only grim determination. Where others gloried in reaving, Andrik simply killed. His silence and brutality made him feared even among his own people. Though not the crowned king, Andrik remains a symbol of the Ironborn's raw, unyielding strength. Sir Duncan the Tall, hedge knight of legend, star of the tales of Dunk and Egg, later Lord Commander of Kingsguard and close friend to the future king Aegon V. Egg. Tall, plain and noble, counted many tourney and field feats in his youth, defended the small folk as a hedge knight and later served the realm in high office. His duels and episodic tales show a brave, skilled and principled fighter who favored honor over ambition. His weapons and his style was a classical hedge knight sword and lance work, practical, stubborn and surprisingly effective for a man from Flea Bottom, a folk hero model of knighthood, ancestor of later figures. Brienne is said to be descended from him. At Ashford Meadow, Dunk defended the honor of a young girl against Princess of Realm, standing tall even against Prince Aemon Targaryen. I hope I'm saying his name right. Again and again he proved that size was matched only by heart. With his great height and raw strength, Dunk was a formidable opponent, but it was his kindness and humility that made him beloved. He stood beside King Aegon V, his sworn brother and friend. Songs remember him not just as a warrior, but as a true knight, perhaps the truest Westeros ever knew. Sir Quentyn Fireball. I know his name is weird, but bear with me. A knight of House Ball and master at arms at the Red Keep during Aegon's IV's time. Nicknamed Fireball for temper and red hair. He sided with Daemon Blackfyre in the first Blackfyre rebellion after feeling slighted by court favor. Instrumental as a commander and trainer of fighters in the Red Keep and a supporter of Blackfyre causes. He aided rebellions and led men in the conflict of the Blackfyre heroes. Courtly knight turned rebel, skilled instructor and field commander rather than a single combat legend. Example of how court slights and personal honor could tip experienced man into dynastic rebellion. He trained squires into warriors, knights into killers, and when Daemon Blackfyre raised his banners, Fireball was among his greatest champions. His feats in the first Blackfyre rebellion became legend. Charges that shattered lines, duels that left seasoned veterans broken. Though his life ended on the battlefield, his name, Fireball, burned on in story and song, a flame that consumed everything until nothing was left but ashes. Maelys Blackfyre, Maelys the Monstrous, the last of the male Blackfyre pretenders in the long Blackfyre line. Called the Monstrous in the histories, his fate marks the effective end of Blackfyre male line. He led one of the last Blackfyre attempts at power, commanded sellswords and pirates in and around the Stepstones and the Narrow Sea. He was ultimately killed, ending the main Blackfyre threat. He was depicted as a brutal and physically imposing, fought as a seaborne commander with mixed arms. His death closes centuries of Blackfyre pretensions and marks the exhaustion of that dynastic rival. He rose as Captain General of the Golden Company, leading mercenaries with unmatched brutality. At the War of Nine Penny Kings, Maelys' legend met its end when Sir Barristan Selmy rode forth to meet him in single combat. The clash was titanic, a knight of pure skill against a giant of inhuman strength. When Selmy slew Maelys, it ended not only the war but the Blackfyre line itself. Yet his name lingers for the sight of Maelys on the battlefield. A towering colossus with two faces was something out of nightmare. Khal Drogo, mighty Dothraki Khal, whose Khalasa was one of the largest. A horse lord unmatched in mounted shock combat. Led lightning raids and slaughtered opponents with rapid mounted assaults. Known for destroying cities and subduing foes by overwhelming mounted force. His reputation in the Dothraki and in Essos is one of the unstoppable momentum, and his weapons and style is Dothraki arak and mounted spear tactics, lighting mobility and savage fast strikes from horseback. The archetypal Khal, legend and terror in Essosi plains. His name survives in his stories and in the naming of Daenerys' dragon Drogon. Drogo wielded a raka, a curved blade perfectly suited for horseback combat. In battle, he was swift as the wind, his strikes like lightning. Rivals fell one after another, their blood feeding the grasslands. In one duel, Drogo tore out an opponent's throat with his bare hands, showing that even unarmed, he was death incarnate. To Daenerys, he was her sun and the stars. To the world, he was the embodiment of the Dothraki power. Had fate not cut him down early, Drogo might have led his horde across the Narrow Sea and Westeros would have trembled before him. Maybe. Sir Harras Harlaw, heir of House Harlaw, a notable Ironborn knight who wields the storied Valyrian blade Nightfall and is an important figure among the Harlaws, active in the internal politics and skirmishes of the Iron Islands. As a knight, he participates in island warfare and contest for lordship among the Harlaws. A rare example of an Ironborn knight, trained and armored, skilled with a Valyrian steel blade were mentioned, combining Ironborn ferocity with knightly technique. Harras represents the cross-pollination of Ironborn strength and mainland knightly forms, respected and feared in regional power struggles. Harras carved his legend during the Wars of the Ironborn, raiding castle lines, dueling rivals, and upholding a rare sense of honor among his savage people. Where other Ironborn relied on access and numbers, Harras fought like a true knight, swift and precise. Songs claim his sword Nightfall gleamed like a dark star on the waves, cutting down foes as the sea spray rose around him. He may not have ruled kingdoms, but in the Iron Islands, Sir Harras was whispered of as a warrior apart, a man who could have stood with any knight of the mainland. Strong Belwas, former Meereenese pit fighter, a massive tanned eunuch known as a Strong Belwas who later serves Daenerys, famed for never losing in the pits. Notable for pit victories and several brutal fights in Dany's service, skirmishes and arena-style combat in the Salvors Bay conflicts. Acts as a human battering ram and personal bodyguard in his small-scale engagements. Brute strength and pit fighting technique. Fights often with massive sword, axe or bear strength. allowing opponents to cut him once before he kills them, a pit custom he liked. A fan favorite type, the unstoppable pit champion who becomes a useful enforcer for a would-be queen. Belwas had a peculiar custom. In every duel, he allowed his opponent to cut him once, a scar to mark his body, a tally of his victories. By the time he reached Daenerys, his skin was a living tapestry of wounds. When he faced the champion of Meereen, the crowd expected a brutal contest. Instead, Belwas dispatched the man swiftly, slit his belly, and squatted in triumph. His victories may not carry the elegance of Otto Dayne or the fury of Robert Baratheon, but the strong Belwas was proof that raw toughness and pit-born grit could stand shoulder to shoulder with the finest knights of Westeros. Maegor Targaryen, third Targaryen king famed for brutality and bloody rule. Famed dragon rider and war king who built the Red Keeps, might by force, quelled multiple insurrections and conflicts to secure the Iron Throne. Personally famous for crushing rival lords, bloody executions, and using sheer terror as policy. He fought to secure his crown and defended his rule with extreme violence. A king who loved blood and battle. Radioactive blend of sword, dragons, and ruthless orders to slaughter enemies. An infamous ruler whose reign scared the dynasty. His name is synonymous with cruelty and the deadly costs of holding power by force. At the battle beneath the Guide's Eye, Maegor and his dragon Balerion burned the faith militant by the hundreds. He wielded Blackfyre, the ancestral sword of his house, and in personal combat he was unmatched. When the warriors' sons defied him, Maegor smashed their champion's head to plop before the sept. When his own nephew challenged him for the throne, Maegor left them broken and bleeding. His rule was drenched in blood, and though his end was shrouded in mystery, his name lives on as one of the most brutal warriors ever to wear a crown. Robert Strong, a mysterious king's guard named Sir Robert Strong, a hulking 8-foot man introduced as Cersei's champion. In the books, he is heavily implied to be the reanimated Gregor Clegane under Qyburne's tampering. Little public combat yet in the published books. His appointment and rumored presence signal a terrifying, nearly unstoppable champion meant for trial by combat and to intimidate opponents. Theories and in-text hints tie him to Gregor's monstrous survival. His weapons and style is unknown, but physical description implies massive strength and unstoppable force rather than nuance. A looming unnatural product of Qyburne's experiments, a walking weapon that changes the rules of knightly combat in King's Landing. Gregor the Mountain was already the most feared killer in the Seven Kingdoms. A butcher who crushed Oberyn Martell's skull, a monster who left only ashes and screams in his wake. He did some dirty stuff too. Now, as Robert Strong, he does not eat, he does not drink, he doesn't speak, he is an instrument of terror, awaiting trial by combat where no mortal knight could hope to defeat him. His legend is still unfinished, but every whisper of his presence makes clear. Robert Strong is no chivalric hero, he's the nightmare of Westeros made flesh. Robert Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End, who led Robert's rebellion and became King Robert I. A charismatic, boisterous, and violently fictive warrior in his youth, a star of his own rebellion, defeated Rhaegar's forces at the Trident, decisive battle, and slew Rhaegar in single combat. Legend says Robert's warhammer crushed Rhaegar. He won multiple engagements in a short campaign that overthrew the Targaryens. His weapons and style is a warhammer, crushing power, less finesse, huge physical strength, excels in battlefield shock and single combat brawn. A king made by blood and blunt force. His reign is later marked by decay, but his martial youth remains central to Westerosi memory. At the Battle of Summerhall, he smashed lords with a single swing. At Goldtown, he stormed the walls himself, and at the Battle of Trident, Robert faced Prince Rhaegar Targaryen in single combat. With one crushing blow of his warhammer, Robert slew the Dragon Prince, ending a dynasty's reign. Robert the Usurper may have ruled poorly, but Robert the Warrior was unstoppable. But understand this, the exact mechanics of Rhaegar's death are described in the histories as Robert delivering a crushing strike with his hammer, but some details around choreography are narrative tradition more than forensic fact. Argilac Durrandon, last of ancient Storm Kings, House Durrandon, who ruled the Stormlands prior to Aegon's conquest, known for pride and the fateful bargain that set his fate. He fought against Aegon's advancing forces during the conquest, the last storm, and was slain by Orys Baratheon in single combat. His death marks the end of his house's independent kingship and the rise of House Baratheon. His weapons and style was a traditional Stormlands lordly warcraft. Heavy cavalry, pragmatic field command, and valor in single combat. His fall is a turning point in the conquest. His epithet reflects both his proud stance and the cost of misjudging Aegon Targaryen. When Aegon the Conqueror demanded submission, Argilac spat on the offer. He met Orys Baratheon in battle, and though he lost his kingdom, his defiance earned him eternal renown. In single combat, he fought like a storm given flesh. His arrogance may have doomed his line, but his courage immortalized his name. Sandoq the Shadow, a mute nearly 7-foot Lysine pit fighter turned household champion for Lady Lara Rugar in the Targaryen court. His face was horribly scarred, and he concealed his disfigurement behind a black veil. He is recorded in Fire and Blood and related appendixes. He is famous for slaughtering a king's guard detachment at Maegor's Holdfast, in an episode that produced an 18-day standoff during the Lysine Spring. His pitfighting background is credited with countless arena kills, man and beast, before entering court service. Wielded a curved Valyrian steel blade with dragonbone hilt and a tall black shield. Brute power plus feral pitfighter technique. Overwhelming strength, endurance, and terrifying close quarters skill. His legacy is one of the spookiest individual fighters in the annals. A pit-born guardian whose single-man defense of his lady is still told by maesters and artists. He wielded an axe as if it were a child's toy. Few could match his raw strength. While little is known of his end, the stories of his victories in the fighting pits of Lys and behind give him a reputation of near mythic brutality. Where knights spoke of honor, Sandoq spoke only in the language of steel. Daemon Blackfyre, founder of House Blackfyre. Bastard son turned founder of Blackfyre, took the name from the sword Blackfyre, central figure of the Blackfyre rebellions that split Westerosi loyalties in the generation after the Aegon IV. He led armed revolts against the Targaryen line, charismatic warrior leader who won many supporters and fought pitched battles in the first Blackfyre rebellion, and his descendants continues the wars. His military leadership won him kingship among his followers for a time. Tradition says he bore the famed Blackfyre, a Valyrian steel sword. His persona is that of a bold, charismatic commander who could both duel and lead field forces. Founder of dynastic line that sparked decades of civil war. The Blackfyre cause reshaped noble military loyalties for generations. He was not just a commander, but a warrior who led from the front, cutting down knights and lords with a sword as tall as a man. To his followers, he was the rightful king. To his enemies, he was death incarnate. His rebellion may have failed, but the legends of Daemon Blackfyre lived on for generations. Aemon the Dragonknight, Prince Aemon Targaryen. A Targaryen prince called the Dragonknight, a king's god and later lord commander, associated in tradition with the Valyrian steel sword, dark sister, and dragon riding in older generations. A great knight of his era, fought in the tournaments and wars of the Targaryen Golden Age, rode dragons, were noted, and earned renown in many contests of arms. He also plays roles in dynastic conflicts recorded in fire and blood. His weapons and style was a Valyrian steel blade, dark sister, and the tactics of dragon rider knight, combines mounted, sword, and dragonborn shock power, remembered as a paragon of the Targaryen knight tradition. His deed anchor generations of Targaryen lore. Captured once by enemies, Aemon endured torture rather than betray his vows. In single combat, he was said to wield his blade with the fury of dragon fire itself. His romance with Queen Nerys, whispered but never proven, gave him a tragic, noble aura. He was the chivalric ideal made flesh, and in many ways, the last true knight of his age. Sir Barristan Selmy.
Even now I could cut through the five of you like carving a cake!
Barristan the Bold, renowned king's god, long career serving multiple kings, legendary reputation for honor and bladecraft. Later joins Daenerys in exile after being dismissed from the Red Keep. Sir Barristan Selmy is a lifelong veteran. Tourneys, wars, and countless single combats. Famous for holding his own against far younger foes, even in old age. His recorded feats include actions defending kings, battles in stepstones, and service on many fronts. His weapons and style is a classical knightly technique, balance, reading opponents, and masters timing. Not flashy, but devastatingly efficient. Possibly the single most respected knight of his generation. Reputation carries political as well as martial weight. He fought in the War of the Nine Penny Kings, slaying Maelys I Blackfyre in single combat, as you know. He cut his way through the stepstones through the siege of Pike and served 3 kings in their prime. Even Robert Baratheon, who had no love for knights, admired Selmy. And in his later years, he served Daenerys Targaryen, proving that even in his old age, his skill and honor still shone as brightly as any man half his age. Sir Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer. Son of Tywin Lannister, youngest ever Kingsguard in his youth, later famed and reviled as the Kingslayer after he slew Aerys II. A complex figure, brilliant swordsman in youth, later wounded and changed by losing his right hand. Key feats include his service in tournaments and wars, his role in ending Aerys' reign, fighting throughout Robert's rebellion, and later actions during the War of the Five Kings. His dual and personal combats across the series show a blend of speed and economy of motion, and cunning leadership. His weapon and style is a swordsmanship that emphasizes quick, precise cuts and economy. Was at peak an absolutely elite duelist. After his maiming, he becomes less a pure duelist and more a strategist. A tragic archetype, one of the best trained fighters in Westeros whose reputation is tangled with infamy. Before his maiming, Jaime fought in Greyjoy Rebellion, leading the charge at Pike with the Kingsguard. He was fast, arrogant, and deadly precise. Tywin Lannister believed him as a weapon as sharp as any sword in his waltz, yet Jaime's legacy is stained by one act, the slaying of King Aerys. And though many people spat Kingslayer at him, none denied his skill. Even after losing his sword hand, Jaime's instincts still flicker, the ghost of the warrior he once was. Sir Arthur Dayne, Sword of the Morning. The finest knight I have ever saw was Sir Arthur Dayne. They called him the Sword of the Morning. That boy had wanted to be Sir Arthur Dayne. Jaime Lannister reflecting on his own aspiration. Jaime again says that he admires his sword skill. He says, "I learned from Sir Arthur Dayne, who could have slain all 5 of you with his left hand."
He's better than my father.
Far better.
Legendary Knight of House Dayne, a king's guard under Aerys II, and barrier of ancestral blade Dawn, revered as one of the greatest swordsmen in Westerosi memory, or perhaps the greatest one. Sir Arthur Dayne was famous for the Tower of Joy confrontation. By many accounts, he fought like a whirlwind there, defending the tower against Ned Stark and his companions. His battlefield reputation, tourneys, border fights is one of the supreme technique and reach. Sir Arthur Dayne's weapons and style was two-handed sword, Dawn, a long reach, elegant footwork, described as almost balletic in motion. His name is invoked as the standard for dueling perfection. Songs and stories make him a near mythic ideal of knightly skill. When men speak of Arthur Dayne, they do so with reverence. He bore Dawn, a pale greatsword said to be forged from the heart of a fallen star. Unlike Valyrian steel, Dawn was singular, bestowed only upon the greatest knight of House Dayne. We hear again and again from Ned Stark himself that no man was Arthur's equal. At the Tower of Joy, it took Ned and 6 companions to bring Dayne down, but we still don't know how he went down. And it wasn't brute strength that defined him, but his blend of grace, skill and honor. In tournaments, he was unmatched. In war, his name inspired both dread and admiration. Dayne wasn't just a knight, he was the shining image of what knighthood was supposed to be. From the shining blade of Arthur's Dayne to the crushing warhammer of Robert Baratheon, from Maegor's cruelty to Dung's honor, Westeros has known many warriors, but few true legends. Each of these men, and some monsters, left scars upon the history of the realm. Their victories reshaped kingdoms, their defeats ended dynasties. And though time swallows all men, their names live on in song, in story, and in fear. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please subscribe and like for more. Until next time, don't you dare go hollow.